Good man. Good morning. That story about Marshall, by the way, is very true. My hometown is Canova, West Virginia. It stands for Kentucky, Ohio, and West Virginia. If you see the movie We Are Marshall, you'll see the fire departments wearing the Canova Volunteer Fire Department. My cousins were the firemen. I was 6 years old. I watched the plane crash. My town's 1 square mile, so I watched the mountain burn and then obviously the community rebuild. So it's a very big part of my life. I wear this ring every single day. This is the We Are Marshall ring. So absolutely. Chad Pennington, Randy Moss, Byron Leftwich, the whole crew were very proud of him. But that's not why we're here to talk about Marshall. We're here to talk about something much more important, which is the inspiration that you carry as a result of the man whose trophy you are a nominee for, and that is Bill Campbell. And what we're going to do throughout the day and tomorrow is share with you some wisdom, some inspiring stories that came from Bill Campbell for those of us who knew him. And what I want to do in advance, you heard a little bit of this last night for those who were at the reception. Bill was a larger-than-life character, which meant he loved life, he had a zeal for life, and as a result, that zeal sometimes came through in colorful language. And so I'm going to do a little bit of a caveat up front. I'm going to ask that if you hear any colorful language coming from any presenter throughout the day, please forgive the presenter, but also know something. I knew Bill 15 years, and I saw him in every possible venue, including church. And his language didn't change in any venue. But I never had any one person ask him for an apology because they knew his heart. It never came from malice or bad intent. And so when you hear these stories today, just take it as an adjective or an adverb and not as anything that sounds like it's intended to offend. So usually these things are PG-13. With Bill Campbell, they move towards R or Cinemax After Dark. So hang on. All right, so I think I'll start. I'll break the ice by telling you how I met Bill Campbell. I joined Intuit in 2003, and at the time, Bill was our chairman of the board. My prior company was not happy that I was leaving the company and joining this West Coast company. So they sued in court. They tried to prevent it. Now you can see how successful that was, but it did take a little bit of money to fight in court. So I show up my very first week at Intuit. I'm sitting at my first leadership meeting, and all of a sudden from behind I have somebody come around. They get me in a chokehold. It cuts off my oxygen. They lean over, whisper in my ear with this ruffly beard on my cheek and says, "You're the that cost us millions of dollars." And I turned around, and it's our chairman of the board. And I thought, my God, my career's over before it even started. And then he gave me this kiss on the cheek. And he said, "Relax, we think you're worth it, and we have your back." I'll tell you, that moment was a perfect encapsulation of Bill Campbell's life. It came with colorful language. It came with a heartfelt belief in an individual. And it came with an enduring loyalty to always have your back regardless of what you're up against. That is Bill Campbell. Now, Bill went on to play a huge role in my life. He played a huge role in Intuit's life. In fact, he served as our CEO not once, but twice. And he was our chairman of the board for 21 years. Now, we consider it a privilege to have him in our life. And in January of 2016, when he was stepping down after 21 years, obviously knowing he was sick, and this was just a few months before he passed away, we held a tribute to him. And on our campus, we invited friends and family members, and he called everybody family. So all from the Silicon Valley came together, and we celebrated Bill Campbell. And to do that, we actually did a video montage to thank him, and he got to see it. We've never shown this video outside of Intuit because at Bill's request, those things that happened in the house stayed in the house. But his family, Eileen and Maggie and Jim, gave us permission to share it with you because you're a very special group. So without further ado, could I ask to please roll the video? We thought it would be important for you to know whose name is on that trophy that you're representing and you're a nominee for, and for those who've won that award, the kind of flame that you carry. He was a remarkable man. When he retired, we did a few things for him in addition to that video. We named a Coach's Award, where we give it to the employee who is most invested in their people, gives back the most to their community, and stands up for diversity and inclusion, and in particular is a champion for women. You'll hear more about that later when you hear a lot of women executives speak on how Bill actually broke the glass ceiling and enabled them to survive and thrive in the meritocracy. The other thing we did is we retired his jersey, the number 67 he wore at Columbia. We put an Intuit jersey on there, and it hangs in our Ring of Honor, and you'll see that when you go to the Intuit campus today. And then last but not least, we renamed where our headquarters is located, so when you pull up at Intuit today, it is 2700 Bill Campbell Way. And all those things meant something to Bill, but what Bill wanted most of all was for all of us to pay it forward, and that's why I'm here today, and that's why everybody else is here today. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to share a couple lessons with you with my remaining 7 or 8 minutes, just so you had a feel for who Bill was, both as a coach, as a teammate, and as a human being and a friend. And the first thing I wanted to share was Bill's expectations of leaders. Now, that's a word everybody tosses around. When I talk about a leader and Bill talks about a leader, it's a supervisor, it's a teacher, it's an elected official, it's a pastor, it's a parent. No matter what role you have, he believed that your responsibility was to serve others. And he didn't believe you could separate somebody's personal life from their professional life. He saw those as two sides of the same coin, so he coached the whole person. I never had a meeting in 15 years with Bill Campbell that did not begin with, how are you doing? How is your wife Elise, and how are your two girls doing? He always wanted to know about you as a person before he got into the business. And the night before I became CEO, I was scared to death. I had no idea what this job was going to be, and I sat down and I said, Bill, what should I expect? He said, let me tell you what's not going to change. You're going to have to work your ass off, and if your results aren't good, you're not going to stay in the job. And I thought, well, there's encouragement. He said, but I'll tell you the one thing you can't anticipate, but I want you to think about. In this job, every night when you go to bed, you should go to bed and you should think about 8,000 employees who work in this company. And I want you to picture their faces, think about their families, and tuck them in bed with you every night. Because that's the job of a CEO, is to care about everyone that you serve. And that's how Bill thought about it. He cared about every single individual, and it was that simple. And that carried over into his commitment for diversity and inclusion. He believed everybody deserved a fair chance, especially those who had the deck stacked against them. And you're going to hear from lots of leaders today who are going to talk about his power and his influence to try to ensure that it was pure meritocracy out here. He didn't care about race, color, religion, sexual orientation, personality style. For Bill, there was only three things that mattered. The first thing was your passion. The second was your grit, your willingness to get up and dust yourself off. And last but not least, your moral compass. He wanted to make sure that you were focused on the things that mattered most. So that's Bill's expectations of leadership. It was that simple. Care about every human being, have a moral compass, have a lot of passion, and have some grit. His expectations of players, pretty clear as well. First of all, he wanted to make sure that players understood that a player that makes the team great is more valuable than a great player. And for him, it came down to a couple simple elements. Integrity. Say what you mean and mean what you say. Bill thought that everybody should know that their teammate would be there for them for all things big and small. My friend Chad Pennington has a quote. He said they used this in the New York Jets, which is, there is no I in team, but there is an M and an E, and my teammates need to know they can count on me. And when Bill heard that, he loved it. And by the way, he loved Chad Pennington, who was also a Bill Campbell Award winner. So it's one of those things that just carried through in Bill's life. The other thing that Bill wanted was loyalty. He thought that a player should play for something greater than themselves. They had to have a cause to play for, and he wanted to see them committed to a cause and not just committed to their own success. And he looked for that in everybody. And last but not least, he looked for commitment. Bill Campbell, you saw that sort of scowl on his face and that big cigar. He expected 100% minimum and more if you had it. And believe me, he could find more than 100%, couldn't he, Michael? And he could really push on you. But look at his own life story. Imagine this guy. This guy came out of Homestead, Pennsylvania. Charlie can tell you more about that. Homestead, Pennsylvania, smaller than my own town of Canova, West Virginia. He didn't get recruited by any school. He ends up wanting to play offensive guard at Columbia, 167 pounds, 5'7", back when the average lineman was about 250 pounds. He not only played offensive guard, and he was the captain of that team that went on to be the Ivy League champions. All 167 pounds of this guy. And he did that all through grit. My last lesson very quickly. There's one thing that Bill expected of everybody that cut across players and leaders. And that was courage. Bill used to tell everybody, courage is not the absence of fear. If you're not afraid, you're not a human being. It is your willingness to stand up and face it that makes you somebody worth respecting. And Bill believed it was about trying and failing. He loved people that were willing to stretch themselves and go into some area that they didn't think they had any skills or capabilities, especially athletes who sometimes defined themselves by the role they had been in since 4th grade. All of a sudden that career came to an end and they weren't sure what to do. And he said, you don't understand. Everything that you have done to excel is exactly what you need to do in life, which is why he loved this trophy. Now, think about Bill's life. This is the synopsis you'll hear about throughout the day. Homestead, Pennsylvania, Columbia football, college football coach, recruited to a world-class advertising agency, led marketing at Kodak, goes on to lead sales and marketing at Apple for Steve Jobs, becomes the CEO of multiple software startups, becomes the CEO and chairman of Intuit, becomes the coach of the entire Silicon Valley, from Steve Jobs to Larry and Sergey to Jeff Bezos to Brad Smith to Dan Rosenswag to you name it. Everyone here has a conference room named after Bill Campbell or has a road named after Bill Campbell, because Silicon Valley wouldn't be here if it weren't for Bill Campbell. And what's amazing is if you asked him about his life, you'd say, hey, Bill, how did you get here? He'd say, dumb luck. Dumb luck. Just a dumb football player. Don't know how I got here. And we said, Bill, bullshit. But what he would do, you'd say, tell me, why did you quit coaching? What would be his answer? Hell, did you ever see my record? We asked him about being CEO of a company called Go. This was the company before Intuit. He said they should be called Go, Going, and Gone because they went out of business so fast under my leadership. But then after he actually got past the self-deprecation, the thing he'd always talk about, but you should have seen the team I played with. You should have seen the people with me in the huddle. All the people that served with him at Go, which was a company that did go out of business, went on to become CEOs of Silicon Valley companies. Many of them were up there. This guy knew how to grow and develop talent like nobody else. The last thing that I want to share with you is a personal story. I was sitting with Bill about 3 weeks before he passed away. He was doing his one-on-ones at his home because he had his IV treatments and things, and he didn't want to come out in public, and he was sick. But he wouldn't cancel a meeting. And we were talking about life, and he said, I want you to remember a couple things. Your title makes you a manager. Your people will decide if you're a leader. Don't ever think because someone tells you you're the coach, or because you're the parent, because you fathered a child, or you were the mother of a child, doesn't make you a parent until you show the love and the caring of everybody. That was his lesson he wanted to leave me with. And on TV, there was this, I guess it was the Animal Planet. And there was this scene where these wildebeest walked up to the river, and they're stammering, and they're trying to get across the other side, and they stop, and both of us kind of stopped and looked at the TV a minute, I think because I was wiping away tears. And there were crocodiles in the water. And these antelope weren't sure, these wildebeest, what to do, and eventually one jumped. And then they all jumped, and they started to go across the water, and 2 or 3 of them didn't make it, but most of them made it. And I looked at Bill, and I'm thinking, how are we going to break the ice? And he said, God made a very special wildebeest when he made that first one that jumped. And I looked at my friend, and I thought God made a very special man when he made Bill Campbell. The guy who would actually jump when the odds were stacked against him and lead a group of people to safety on the other side. That's Bill Campbell. So in closing, I'll say this. He wasn't the first to talk about servant leadership. He wasn't the first to fight for the diversity and the power of the underdog. He wasn't the first to say you need to care about everybody. But those burned so brightly in Bill that he left an indelible mark on all of us, and my life will never be the same as a result. And I will say he hated honors. I said this last night, and he's probably up in heaven cussing right now. But I actually believe he's sitting there smiling. He's smiling down on us because you're his people. You're his team. You're the nominees and the prior award winners of the William B. Campbell Trophy, and you honor him in the way you live your life. God bless you. Thank you very much.